Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's another episode in our very special Masters series. We have seen some Masters. We are joined by another one today. It is, of course, the Master of Zebra Finches, Mr. Peter Harrison. Peter, thank you for your time. Always a pleasure to see you, mate. Always a pleasure to be in your bird room.
It's good for the laughs, you know. I mean, we have a riot.
We do.
Yeah, it's you know, I mean, clearly for me, you know, I know some of the other people that you've invited to do this. I mean, it's an honour for me to be considered, you know, worthy of time associated with those people, because most of them are people that are, I'm not saying that I'm young, but most of them are people that I've looked up to for, you know, for decades.
Yeah.
So yeah,
well, you are an honourable member of this, and by your own achievements, mate. So you
yeah, I just hope to, you know, sort of justify you asking me, you know. So yeah, it's really good, and I'm really, you know, excited to do it. Yeah, it's brilliant.
God bless you. See, he's humble to the last, this chap. So, Peter, your zebra finch journey has been, well, it's been a few summers, hasn't it? It's been it's been a few years.
Hence the grey hairs.
Yeah, there's still pictures of you in here with dark hair.
Yeah, but they're 20 years ago at least now, and I can hear people saying stop mucking about. But there you go.
Yeah. You're never going to do that. So, I think one of the first questions, I guess, that I've asked really everyone in this series is that, you know, if you want to be Peter Harrison with zebra finches, where does it start? And I guess the first question is around that initial stock, and not just, you know, buying stock willy-nilly, but making that choice on stock and having that sort of fixation of the bird in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't that clever to do that initially. I mean, I had a little grounding in you know, a few pet birds and whatnot, and got a bit of general information, you know, of husbandry with birds. Made, you know, the common mistakes that anyone would make. Also had some experience with canaries, which, you know, was you know, priceless, to be honest. So yeah, that was initially, and then you know, you start looking at it, and I'm going to start showing these things. So it's not for everybody, but it was for me, because I've always been competitive in whatever I've done. So if you're going to be competitive, you know, I started to show the birds and didn't really have a clue as to what I should be getting. It was just the bright colours, or, you know, the ones that look nicer than the others to the eye, the naked eye. I didn't really understand what I was trying to get to. So before I sort of really began acquiring stock or pedigree stock, the first thing that I needed to do, which I think a lot of people fail to sort of do this step, is find out what a good one actually looks like.
Yeah.
To me, that was more important than going to someone's shed and saying, oh, I'll buy that one, or I want that one, or I must have that one. Because, you know, unless you know what you're trying to achieve or a goal to, it would be like being a footballer and somebody throwing you a ball, but not telling you you've got to put it in the goal and keep it out of your goal. It's like a fundamental, really, of what you wanted to do. So what I did, I went to the best and biggest shows in the UK, and really competed with them shows. But I competed at first the juvenile section, and then the novice section. By that time, I'd had birds, zebra finches. I'd had them for 10 years, thereabouts, and had a little bit of success. You know, managed to win a show, you know, best in show against the champions. I think that was 1983, and that kind of, you know, really gave me that thing that not only could I do it, I'd done it once, so you could maybe do it again. So that gave me that impetus to then start thinking, right, I'm going to improve these birds, or my birds, so I can compete week in, week out with, say, at the time, you know, Jim Addison or Dave Booth, or the names that we had in our, you know, in our kind of topic area. So I'd looked at their birds, and when I say I studied the birds, that sounds very grand. But basically, I looked at their birds. I didn't go to the shows and look at my own. I looked at their birds, mainly the birds that were winning the top awards, and formed, an idea as to where I wanted to go and what I wanted, to aspire to, really. Then I started along the process of trying to, I mithered them to death. You know what I mean? Can I have this? Could I buy that? And those people, were really very kind to me. There's no doubt about that, and really nurtured me in their own way. So I had plenty of help in it. But what I did do, which may sound a little grand, but I tried to make a bird, a Peter Harrison bird that was different to other people's.
Yeah.
That would almost stand out, not necessarily better in the eyes of other people, but something that I could put my name on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, that's a long, long time ago when you start talking about 1984, 85. But that's really what I did. And then almost kind of fine-tuned that every year to produce that bird in a better form, or a little bit here or a little bit there.
And I think that it's really interesting you saying that, because that's a sort of, throughout this series, this very special series, it's a key theme, because actually your name, as with a Phil Warne Border, a Gerald Spencer Fife, a Keith Ferry Norwich, a Peter Harrison Zebra Finch, and Nick and Anna Lane Barrett Gloucester, they become synonymous with a style and a type of bird, and that bird, does well on the show bench, but it's got that little something about it, which it's got a stamp of a stud.
Yeah, so I agree with that, and just reminding me that I also try to promote birds with attitude. Now, attitude is a broad spectrum term. So, what do you mean? It smokes 3 cigarettes a day. Now, what I mean, I've got a bad attitude, so the missus says, but what I meant was, or what I mean by that is birds with personality. Because, all the birds have different characters and different sort of likes or different ways of presenting themselves. And what I notice is, people come here and say, oh, well, how long do you train your birds? And I said, I don't really, and they said, well, my birds fly around wild, in the bars, so I leave them in the cages overnight. That wouldn't necessarily do your birds any harm, but what I try to tell them is, these birds have been bred for generations of birds that are shorebirds, and successful shorebirds. So really, the calmness or the way they, work the perches or display to each other is something that's genetically in them.
Yeah.
So it's not just the shape and the size, as people like to deem these days, is very important. I like the attitude of the birds. The personality of a bird goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think that's it. We know, don't we? The bird that sort of displays and shows itself off is the bird that catches the judge's eye.
Of course,
and as we've both judged, that's the bird that says, make it easy for me.
Yeah, make it easy.
Because I want you at 3:00 this afternoon to still look like that.
Yeah, I've judged now many years. I'm not saying I've judged well. The booze from the gallery, obviously. But when I've had birds in front of me, and you get a pair, because we in England or UK show zebra finches in pairs. You usually come across a class, whether it's class 1 or class 21, and you think, they're going to take some beating. And really, they make judging easy. Yeah. Somebody off the street probably would pick the same ones. And of course, they have quality. Of course, they're in good condition and, everything that goes with making up a quality pair of zebra finches. But they bounce, they literally bounce, but in a controlled way.
Yeah. And when it comes to, Pete, we're in your room at the moment, but when it comes to the sort of... the sort of setting up and starting, you've got a range of, firstly, top quality zebra finches, and then we've talked in previous episodes you and I have done about, the kind of the mould of the bird and then putting the colour on last. But what is because with canaries we'll strike a cock over multiple hens. Interestingly, some fanciers will say, it's the quality of the cocks, or it's a small hen and a big cock, or it's the other way round. And what's your take on that?
We all have our own ways, and of course, having bred for 50 years, you know, you kind of pick up triggers or you pick up things that seem to work for you. Zebra finches, again, I always stand the corner of showing them, you know, as in showing pairs is more difficult than showing a single bird. But we haven't got that fortune of being able to run a cock with several hens, because they need to take a hen to nest. So you could feasibly run a male with 2 or 3 females over the year, but you'd have to break them from that female. And in some cases, there's a pair bonding, so they won't just take another hen to nest. But I mean, some are more successful than others with it. But clearly, you know, using a stud Norwich cock or something, you get to use that bird multiple times, which makes your job a lot easier, or you get to where you want to be faster. As far as, you know, the type of bird, you know, a big hen with a little cock and vice versa, I see where people get the reasoning for that, but I'm more a believer in 2 good ones together, or you know, 2 with good heads together, and having 2 good ones together. So almost like, you know, I know you notice examples in other forms of life. You know, you tend to get, if you get two models, you know, and they have children, they tend to be good looking. So, you know, you wouldn't pair that model with me. So that's what I'm saying. You know, you are literally using the best birds you can.
Yeah.
That's something, you know, that to me is all important. Use the best you can. You know, making excuses for birds, or, well, I'll use this because, but I know it's not good. That to me isn't. I know we're all limited into what resources we have, as in the ingredients that we can use, but you should use the best ones to the best.
And I think
ones.
that sort of talks to, you know, one of the things about the bunch of people that I've spoken to is, one of the things that's evident in all of them is when it comes to stock selection, there's a ruthless element to it. And would you say that sort of is important in you know, that critical eye, that sort of ruthlessness of selection? Is that important to keep the genetics right and to keep the stud moving forward?
I wouldn't say it's important. I'd say it's absolutely essential, you know, because when you breed, I mean, zebra finches, you know, they don't breed as freely as they did when I started with them, but, you know, you can breed quite a number of them, you know, in a short space of time, a 3-month, 4-month period. So if you weren't really ruthless with the birds or critical of the birds, you'd end up with 1,000 birds, or you'd end up with, you know, letting birds go that you maybe should have kept, and keeping birds that maybe you know's got weaknesses in them. You know, to me, you're constantly weeding out, like weeding a garden. Not that I do much of that, but you're taking the weeds out and leaving the flowers in. You know, and yeah, I mean, that's something that I mean, without being ruthless with them, you never go anywhere. You won't go in one direction or the other. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, too many people in my time in zebra finches, you feel sorry for them in a way, because they win. They start to, you know, win a few prizes or you know, major awards, and then you'll speak to them and they'll say, oh, well, you see, I'm keeping that one. It was only 5th in the class, but I'm going to keep that one because it's the brother or it's the uncle of the one that won last year at you know, Bradford or wherever it may be. And you think, well, if you're going to go down that path, you're going to be keeping them all, because they're all related to some extent.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sorting the wheat from the chaff that's you know, most important. Of course, you make mistakes. I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes, but in a way, they all come back to you in a way, because those people breed from them, and you know, those genes circulate again, and sometimes you have an opportunity of getting one back. So, yeah, I mean, never be afraid of being ruthless with your birds.
No, and I think that's a really important sort of telling point, that, because I think we all, you know, through that selection process, like you say, you know, if I look in my shed, it's like, well, that's related to that, or I'll keep this, but actually it might be a slightly lesser quality, and you need that focus of saying, okay. And when you start the year, do you sort of start with a structure of a framework of the number of pairs that you're going to run, or do the birds dictate?
No, the birds dictate. I mean, usually, I've found with mine, usually, if you have a particularly great year, where you think, does it ever get better than this? If Carl's bird made years for birds, this is it. Usually I've found the year after tends to be, a bit of a drop or a bit of a disappointment, because you think, well, I've got all these tools and it's not kind of delivered as well as it did last year. The first thing I would do in that is really be ruthless. And sometimes I've cut them down from, may seem a lot, but cut them down from, say, 50 females and 35 males. I've cut them down to a dozen, 15 males and 20 females, because I kind of want to go back to the point before it started going a bit wrong or a bit pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So that's where the ruthlessness comes in. And invariably, almost every time I've done that, the year after has been, the best to date.
Yeah.
So it's like you've actually, if it was whiskey, you've put no water in it.
Yeah.
Or not as much water in it, so you taste the whiskey. So yeah, I think being ruthless and with your birds. So no, it's not a numbers game, or it's not a, well, I'll keep so many of this and I'll keep so many of that. It's all on quality.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? That sort of, I found myself on occasions when you sort of trim right back. You prune the things that because we always find reasons to keep a particular bird, whether, because we're human beings after all, we'll like it for a particular reason and stuff. And I guess the final question, Pete, for us in this little episode is and we've covered this a few times, but I think it's worthwhile, is that, colour is something that you're, I won't say it doesn't interest you, but actually the quality of the overall bird interests you, and then getting colour on it and developing different lines, whether they be creams, whether they be silvers, that's the kind of the thing that keeps you going, I guess. What keeps you going after all these years? Yeah,
that's the side of it that interests me, mainly because of my background from when I started. The UK, because I know this film goes to all places, Timbuktu even. In the UK, we would always sort of, if it was pigs or it was horses or whatever, it was always like the type or the shape of them. So that's always interested me, and watching other people, some of these other masters, that I'm lucky enough to be in this episode with, or in this series with. So to me, the shape of the bird is harder to achieve. So to me, to get that right is the first priority. I mean, when I say I'm not interested in colour, that could kind of, make me appear as though I don't care about the colour. Of course I do, and of course I'd like to think I understand what the colours, should be on the standards. But it's not a priority, because if I let the type or the shape of the bird start to wane because of colour, the standard of the silhouette of the bird would start to go a bit all over the place, a bit like looking at a roller coaster. I want to keep that as like a template for everything, and every colour that you have produced or hope to produce or are currently working with, that has that template. So, that's my priority. I think if I was showing birds in Italy, I mean, I've never been to Italy, but I've obviously got knowledge of the birds in Italy. I'd have to look at it from a completely different perspective, and that's just not my thing, but that was kind of the rules and regulations that were laid down to me from being 14, 15. So I've always gone for that.
Yeah. Well, gone for it you have, mate. Gone for it and done it you have. Pete, listen, it's always a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much indeed.
You're more than welcome, Matt. More than welcome.
And thank you for sharing your knowledge. And people, I'd suggest you watch this video once and then watch it again and watch it again and watch it again. And maybe one day you'll be like this man too.